Legacy of the Dark Knight starts as an origin story. It begins with the classic tale of the death of Bruce Wayne's parents after a trip to the cinema, and then follows from there as he's raised by his trusted butler Alfred Pennyworth and later trained in the mountains by the mysterious Ra's al Ghul. Shaped by what happened to his parents, Bruce vows to protect Gotham civilians from the many villains inhabiting the city by becoming the Batman. What follows for the rest and majority of the plot is Batman facing a variety of familiar foes. Legacy's story doesn't really tread new ground, and I don't think it's trying to. So many scenes, character interpretations, lines, and plot points are taken directly from past movie adaptations that, at times, it almost feels like we're playing versions of them. Despite this, Legacy's tone, gameplay, and the way its story unfolds makes it feel like its own thing. It's very charming and likeable, with cutscenes full of gags and great cinematography. It's clear that this was not just a lazy rehash of older Batman media, but a lovingly crafted parody and tribute to the many characters and world of the franchise. The problem is not this tribute to the past, which is a lot of fun, but the fact that it's not done within an entirely coherent story. To be sure, the character of Batman does have an arc, and there are plot threads that span multiple chapters, but at the same time, it can't help but feel like a series of different episodes pieced together so as to get in as many fan-favourite villains as possible. I felt like we were jumping from one story to another without being able to get invested in any to a considerable degree. It didn't seem like there was an overarching conflict, and this left the game feeling oddly disjointed, as if many of these characters and scenes could have been taken out with little consequence to the story as a whole. That being said, each of these chapters, disconnected as they often feel from one another, are still entertaining on their own. Legacy is fairly cutscene heavy for the type of game it is, and these cutscenes were a joy to watch. The amount of jokes being told in almost all of them is actually quite impressive. Even more impressive is how many of those jokes land. I was constantly laughing out loud throughout the game, so much so that I even surprised myself. It reminded me of the old Naked Guns and Airplane, where if you blink you'll probably miss about a dozen sight gags or puns. It added so much charm to the game and made the story, for all its flaws, always enjoyable to watch. This comedy extends to the gameplay too, and this game's depiction of Gotham City. Civilians and goons will say funny things, and there are numerous visual jokes scattered throughout. One that particularly stood out to me was a billboard for a car insurance company called Hardly Dented, a clever play on Harvey Dent. But it's not just for its jokes that Gotham shines. The city itself is visually stunning, with the lights from the various buildings contrasting so well with the dark, perpetually rain-drenched streets. It doesn't hurt at all that it's so easy to traverse. To get where you need to go, you can glide through the night sky, open up fast travel points in each of the map's different districts, or take the vehicles available to Batman and his sidekicks. I found all of these things useful while playing. Driving is chaotic and fun, and the fast travel is extremely efficient. The gliding and grappling system owes a lot to the Arkham games, and it benefits from that. There are so many buildings that you can constantly grapple from one to the other and make your way across the entire map with ease. Speaking of the Arkham games, Rocksteady's brilliant series is the biggest inspiration to Legacy's gameplay as a whole. The car mechanics, traversing, map layout, side content and combat all owe something to those games. The fighting especially is a direct lift. This isn't a bad thing, as the combat there and here is highly satisfying. In fact, it's probably one of Legacy's highlights. Dodging, reversing, using gadgets and building up combos is all very easy and very enjoyable. The only complaint I have is that the enemy variety doesn't change up much. Most of the opponents, even the different ones like those with shields and guns, still feel about the same to fight. It's great that you can play as several different characters who each have their own unique weapons to combat the enemies, but it's not quite enough to keep things feeling fresh throughout the entire game. That being said, the combat is still basically that of the Arkham games, and that's not a bad thing at all. Also taken from those games is the stealth. One of the great things about Legacy is that you're often given the choice to either fight enemies head on or to try and take them out discreetly and without raising the alarm. What I appreciate with this stealth is that it's almost always optional. This adds variety to the gameplay, especially if you find yourself getting a bit tired of the hand-to-hand combat. The downside though is that the stealth is just too easy. Obviously this is a kids game and I don't expect Arkham levels of complexity, but you can cause so much noise and be so glaringly obvious and still not be caught. It's as though you're facing Helen Keller. It makes you feel like you aren't really doing anything with skill, more like the game is just giving you an easy ride. Nothing in Legacy is that difficult, but at least the combat feels like it takes some effort to master. However, being that stealth is entirely optional, I won't give the game too much flack for it. It is also still enjoyable to use every now and then to break up the gameplay. Aside from this combat, you'll also be going through the missions having to solve how to get from one area to the next. It's never that complicated, but it still feels enjoyable having to think about which way to open a particular door and exploring different places for pieces to the puzzle. The game constantly introduces new mechanics throughout its runtime, and so no two story missions are exactly the same. There's also lots of variety in the locations. There are missions in the snowy mountains, in the Batcave, at the Arctic section of the zoo, at a parade, in a museum, in a department store, and much more. This really helps to keep the game from going stale. I also enjoyed the different details put into these various locations, and just as with Gotham as a whole, you'll find a ton of jokes within these areas. And so, despite my criticisms of the plot and some elements of the combat, the overall story and gameplay of Legacy's missions is highly enjoyable. It's a fun trip through the past of Batman, done with a great fighting system inherited from the Arkham games and a varied set of objectives. It's admirable that there is so much variety in the locations and the problem solving you have to do. It kept the game entertaining throughout. That's the game's story, but what about its side missions? There are many optional things to do in the open world of Gotham City. Some of these are fun, but basically all of them are run into the ground. There is not a single side mission that I didn't grow sick of. The one where you have to retrieve the Falcone fortune by breaking into various locations with Catwoman is enjoyable at first, but for some reason they thought they'd do 14 of these. They have very little variety and can go on for several minutes each. You'll find yourself doing the safe-cracking puzzle over a dozen times throughout these missions, and not a single thing is done to mix up its formula at any point. This is just one case of many of these side missions becoming extremely tedious. I think they should have all at least been halved, not one needed to be as long as it is. The payoffs are never worth it either. After completing every riddle, you'll get a small cutscene. For helping to track over 20 escaped zoo animals, you'll get a bit of dialogue. Such little reward for such a lot of effort makes these maddening experiences. We're having a heatwave in the UK at the moment, and so I was doing all these side missions in the scorching heat, individually figuring out over 100 different puzzles and opening 200 boxes, while having to listen to Batmite constantly trying to guilt me into going into a shop, Riddler basically calling me a moron, and an endless stream of alerts from the police telling me about crimes going on nearby. By the end of it, I felt like I had gone insane, so much so that I could probably be put in Arkham Asylum myself. I saw one YouTuber call Legacy of the Dark Knight the most fun platinum trophy ever. When I saw that title, I just had to stare like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. I've had headaches more enjoyable than trying to get 100% on this game. All that said, I still liked Legacy of the Dark Knight a lot. All the side stuff is optional, and so I don't want to let it detract too much from the game as a whole. If you just do the main missions, you'll have a great time, and the world is lovingly crafted and beautiful to look at, full of attention to detail and great jokes. It has its problems, but I'm still giving Legacy of the Dark Knight a solid 7.5 out of 10. If I hadn't done the side missions, I would have easily given it an 8. However, it does feature Prince on the soundtrack, so maybe I'm being too harsh.
Love you! Bye-bye.
Come and get me.